Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Kennedy, Alderman Moore, Alderman French,
Present.
Alderman Vaccaro, present. Alderman Carter, Alderwoman Murphy, here. Alderman Ogilvy,
Here.
Chairman Conway.
Present.
5 present, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. This morning, we're going to hear Board Bill number 323. If you would add Alderman Moore to the roll call, I would appreciate that. Alderman Coatar on Board Bill 323.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I appreciate you all being here today for this one board bill. Board Bill 323 would establish a community improvement district and a transportation project agreement, a TDD district as well, for 705 Olive. 705 Olive is the Adler and Sullivan building. If you've driven downtown, it is currently the base of the main floor of the building has a Pickles Deli in it. The top floors are vacant. It is one of two Louis Sullivan buildings in the city of St. Louis, or down, I guess in downtown. At least in downtown, you can quote me on that. The other is the Wainwright building, another historic building. The proposed redevelopment will be done by Restoration St. Louis by Amy and Amrit Gill, and they are proposing to turn this into a mixed-use development consisting of a hotel, residential, and first-floor commercial. As I said, right now the building's vacant on all the upper floors. It has been for approximately a decade. This is approximately a $46 million redevelopment project. Acquisition costs of the building were approximately $3.2 million. If approved, the Transportation Development District would generate approximately $1.3 million in revenues, and the SID would generate just shy of $1 million. We will also be seeking some tax abatement on this project through the HUD's committee at a later date. I've got representatives from Restoration St. Louis and also Hush Blackwell here to answer any further questions, and I would ask for your favorable consideration.
Okay, so what, in order to generate the TID money, is what type of retail operation are they looking at on the first floor?
I'm going to defer to somebody else on that.
Good morning, David Richardson with Hush Blackwell. So the primary generator of the revenue will be a tax on the hotel rooms, but then there will be a restaurant on the first floor, there will be a spa in the basement, and there'll be additional retail space that may be a coffee shop or something like that on the first floor as well.
So it's going to be a hotel?
Correct. It's a 130 room hotel. There's 10 floors of rooms with 13 rooms a floor, so I can walk you through the building. The basement's going to be a spa as well as the gym facilities. First floor will be a restaurant, lobby, and additional retail space. Second floor will be conference room space. Floors 3 through 12 are going to be hotel rooms. 13th and 14th floors are going to be apartments, depending somewhere between a dozen and 18 apartments still being laid out. And then the top floor will be a rooftop bar and lounge, which will serve the hotel. The hotel will be part of Marriott's Autograph Collection. We don't have any Marriott Autograph hotels right now. The Gills, Restoration St. Louis, did a Marriott Autograph hotel up in Davenport, Iowa, called the Blackhawk, and that's what they're proposing to do here. The Blackhawk up in Davenport was a historic hotel that had closed, had seen its better days, and they reopened it up back in 2010. It's a very similar sized project. That was 130 rooms, this is 130 rooms. That was about $46 million, this is about $46 million. And that hotel has set a high mark for hotels in Davenport. It actually does an average daily room rate close to $200 a night and does quite well up there. And so they're hoping to do the same thing here. That was a kind of a landmark building. This certainly is a landmark building here as an Adler and Sullivan building. And they're hoping to re-energize that block. We have 2 blocks of the north side of Olive now that are completely dead, because adjacent to this is the chemical building, which has been vacant for some time and has had several foreclosures and change in ownerships, and nothing's happened with. Then you have this building, which, as the alderman said, had been vacant for over a decade, predominantly just some first floor retail. And then you have the Railway Exchange to the east of us that's dead. So again, hoping to bring life back to this block. And again, we'd start construction. Assuming we get all the incentives in place, we'll start as soon as those get done. So hopefully now in the summer, it'll be a little over 1 year construction. So hopefully next summer, early fall, we'd be up and running. And again, it's a boutique hotel, which is kind of where the industry is headed in lodging. You maybe saw there's an article in the Business Journal, I think, that talked about the demand for boutique experiential hotels. Downtown, we have the Magnolia Hotel, which is a boutique hotel, but other than that, we don't really have boutiques. And so that's the market that the Gills are going after, and very excited to get the project going.
And this will be a sales tax on the room charges and all of the retail sales?
Yes, a 1% SID sales tax and a 1% TDD sales tax, which is generally consistent with if you named a hotel downtown.
So that's 2%? Uh-huh. Okay, so it's 2% extra?
Yep.
And their customers are paying it?
Yep. And if you name a hotel downtown, 90% chance has both the same 2% added to it.
That's fine. Are there any questions from the committee members?
Yes.
Alderman Moore.
Oh, we still having trouble with the Renaissance downtown and what's going on with the Mayfair and the Renaissance Suites. I see they're fixing up the Renaissance Suites again.
So both of the Renaissance became a Marriott. That was closed on over a year ago. A gentleman out of Maryland bought it. His name's Doug Green, and he fixed it up. He put $25 to $30 million of renovations into it. So if you haven't been into it, it's been completely spruced up. It's great. My law firm had our firm retreat there this last fall. The rooms are awesome. What was the Renaissance Suites, or the Lennox Suites across the street, right, that had shuttered, as you know, and that was purchased by Merritt's and Wolf, which is a local hotel outfit that owned the Ritz in Clayton, and it totally redid that, put about, I think, $10 million into it, and that opened up probably 3 or 4 months ago as a residence, yeah, or
Is it a courtyard? Residence.
courtyard? Yeah, courtyard, a Marriott courtyard. The Mayfair you mentioned, that's what is the Magnolia Hotel. That was Stout Street out of Denver, has this chain Magnolia, which has hotels in Denver, Dallas, Omaha, Houston, again, a boutique. And that opened up over a year ago and is doing really, really well.
And this new hotel, is it a chain or who owns the new hotel?
The Magnolia one or this one?
The new one we're proposing.
This one will be owned by Restoration St. Louis, the Gills. And again, the Gills, if you're familiar with them, they did the Coronado. They started out in Skinker to Bolivar doing one house at a time. That's where they got their start. They live in Parkview in the city of St. Louis. They moved up to apartment buildings then over by the SLU campus, and probably their biggest project that you've heard of is the Coronado Hotel across from SLU. They did that back in 2003 as 165 apartments. Then they did Lindell Towers, which is next to the Coronado. They redid that for SLU students. They did the Moolah Theater, which is probably, where they did that project over when no one else could get it done. And so they did all those. They had their kind of base was over by the SLU campus. Then they ventured out, as I mentioned, doing a hotel up in Davenport. They also owned the Holiday Inn Route 66 in Sunset Hills or Crestwood, which was the Viking Inn and was kind of a no-tell motel, and they fixed that up as a Holiday Inn now. And so they've gotten into the hospitality industry.
You answered 5 questions with 1 answer. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Seeing no other questions, I move that we pass Board Bill number 323 out of committee with a do-pass recommendation.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that Board Bill number 323 come out of committee with a do-pass recommendation. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Kennedy, Alderman Moore,
Aye.
Alderman French,
Aye.
Alderman Vaccaro, Alderman Carter, Alderwoman Murphy, Alderman Ogilvy,
Aye.
Chairman Conway.
Aye.
6 aye votes, do pass.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the
No
committee.
other business before us? Oh, Otis has some business.
Oh, we do. Oh, I see Otis came here.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I was told that there were a number of aldermen who wanted to have an update on where we are as far as financing for the NGA. And so
Well, we would love to hear that.
Okay. So,
Pull the mic up a little bit.
okay. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So as you know, at the very outset, we had anticipated that our budget would be around $130 million, and probably 30 million at the time that we started the process, we thought was more in the contingency area. And so what we have done since that time is we've gone through to identify.
Excuse it, could you take the conversation outside? This is actually kind of important to us. Right.
Okay. So we had a budget, and the budget had various line items in that budget. One of those line items included $14 million for the land that we were assembling. So the good news is that we have all of the land now basically assembled. We have signed contracts on 507 of those parcels. And the eminent domain process is underway for 44 of those parcels. 35 of them are essentially parcels that were in need of getting titles cleared and all those kinds of things. And the other 13 are ones that will be, at least almost half of those are really in the same situation, but there are a few contentious ones in that one. But that said, the judge has appointed the commissioners on that, and they are meeting, and so it is about price at this point. And so we think we will get to the end. So we'll have the property assembled. The other major line item that we had to consider was environmental. And so initially our line for environmental was 15.9. So we've been working with the state DNR, the state DED, and with an environmental contractor to get a better handle on all that. So we essentially had our first estimate based on phase ones. We've since done phase twos to get more detailed information on all of the lots, all those that we control, which is about 71% of the lots. And so we were able to then identify more things that were eligible for brownfield tax credits. So the state then came to the table with an additional $20 million of brownfield tax credits. So that's essentially what helped us get to a point that we could afford to do what we did. So, now the state is providing about up to $95 million of TIF, essentially TIF-like financing that will go into a bond issue, and an additional $36 million of brownfield tax credits. And the other funds that are available is the up to $1.5 million that the board passed here during the last session that from the city that will be included in the bond issue that will be made available for the project.
And I did just, and if you have more, I want to hear it. But so from what you said is the cost to the city of St. Louis
Has not changed.
is not changed.
Has not changed.
The state of Missouri has.
The state of Missouri has stepped up to pick up any additional costs that might be occurred.
And then when I saw the article posted in Next STL that the federal government line item budget that had the smaller amount that the Scott Air Force Base people were charging them, that was a line item.
That had nothing to do with it. Let me explain the process. And the one thing about this is I used to do that, put 1391s into the book. And so what you do when you have multiple sites is you always put the largest site that you have so that all the other sites can fit. So the 1391 actually went in with the president's budget. We knew about it 30 days ago. We talked about it with the folks at the NGA. The folks in Illinois are just finding out about it. They make it a big hoopla. And typically the press follows and they make a big hoopla. It is not an indication of what it will be. The NGA also wanted to put in our price, which was $14 million. OMB would not allow them to put the price in because it's sort of a it irks of the sense that the Congress has already appropriated the $14 million. And so they chose to put 1,000. The $800,000 that's there is a typical line item for how to manage a project of this size, and so it's the $800,000. And so it comes out to $801,000. I'm very confident that has no indication as to where the project will land.
And then anybody else can ask questions? I just had one other question. Is there anything else you see us as the Board of Aldermen or the City of St. Louis doing to assure,
No, we're in the,
increase our probability that
we're
on
in the,
April
we're
1st?
in the 11th hour right now, and we've been, you've seen a series of editorials, you've seen a lot of actions that we've had underway. We had the press conference the other day with the governor, the senators, congressmen, and others present to be able to assure, or at least make the public aware of what we've done. We've had several meetings with Mr. Codillo, both in Washington and again last Friday here. And I think we've done what we can do. They asked us at the outset to be able to do several things. We are able to do all of those things. We have the land. We have engineers looking at rerouting utilities. We can do that when time comes. We can clean it up environmentally. The state has stepped up with the brownfield tax credits. So there's nothing out there that they've asked us that we have not been able to provide. And in our case, the legislative bodies, both in the city and the state, have approved the funding to provide it, unlike the one in Illinois.
Are there any questions? Okay, let's see, Alderman Moore.
If we don't get the NGA, will Brownsville still clean up those environmental sites, and would that include the Pruitt-Igoe site as well?
The 36 that we have does not include the Pruitt-Igoe. We have a separate effort going on to identify and categorize that. We have a meeting coming up within the next week to meet with the state to talk about specifically Pruitt-Igoe. And as you know, the size of the brownfield credits depends upon what is actually going to go on it, and so we're in the process of identifying that right now.
Alderman Vaccaro.
Actually, just a quick question. Of course, you know, obviously I hope NGA comes, but again, if they don't come, and their answer's coming in weeks now,
Right.
The people that were doing the proposed eminent domain, then we won't do that?
We will not. We will not exercise any options, nor will we exercise eminent domain.
So those people will be fine. So we're not going to leave them hanging too much more than a couple more weeks.
Right. I can tell you, though,
There you
that they really want this to happen because many of them are in a way better position than they were.
Why? Well, the only reason I asked you, though, there were protesters outside the announcement.
Well, let me tell you who those protesters are. So we have them. There are two, and they have friends that do not live within the area that they bring on board to this. This is Sheila Duff and her husband, Mr. Rendon, who have a friend named Larry Chapman, and they, on all occasions, have been the lead of all of the protests.
And I understand the importance
Okay.
of them coming, and I understand.
And they have that right. They
what
most
we
certainly
did,
do.
But I just want to make sure that if they don't come, that and that's what my assumption was, but I also wanted
Right.
to make sure that so nothing would happen, and
No, this is one where everybody gets to express and they have a right to do what they're doing, so we have no problem with that. I just wanted to just sort of make sure you're aware of the magnitude of what is happening.
right. No, I
Okay.
Alderman Ogilvy, did you have a question?
The McKee properties, have we closed on those, or are those just options?
Those are just options.
It's just options, okay. But they're in the 500,
They're in the 551.
right, okay, thank you.
Okay. Go ahead, Alderman French.
Can you give me an updated number of how much we've spent so far?
We're probably a little over 8 million. It's the number that we have not done any spending since the last time I sent you this, so I can't remember what that number was, but it's about that.
So that's 8 million spent, and then,
Did you say 8 or 80?
8 million.
so 8 million spent, and then, if the NGA announcement goes for St. Louis site, how much in addition to that? Options for?
The total cost of acquisitions and relocation will probably be about 51 million.
Okay, and the NGA, the federal government, has said how much would they be willing to pay?
Well, our budget to them was initially 14 million.
14 million. And with the recent announcement, you're telling them they don't have to pay that 14
Right.
million. And you're saying that that additional amount will be made up by state contributions.
Right.
Okay. And you said it was in a form of a TIF or a bond or somehow?
Well, if you recall, when the state allocated their resources, they passed through House Bill 514 a bill that indicated they could provide up to $12 million on an annual basis. But they also provided for the DED to negotiate. So our negotiations really has us at about a little over $6 million, right around $6 million currently. With the ability that if additional revenue is coming in, i.e. There are more employees or the average salary goes up, then they have the ability to adjust what they provide. But they basically set a cap at the outset on what that would be. So what they have provided essentially provides up to like $95 million in a bond and the additional $36 million in tax credits.
Okay. So you've always been more optimistic about this project than I have.
Right.
It just on its face value, it didn't seem to make much sense. But what we know is that even if they don't choose this site, that we will have expended $8 million at least, and that we will have done a lot of the work for the existing developer, which is Paul McKee, and he did use this pretty successfully to get leverage for us to extend his option on the Pruitt-Igoe site at a very favorable term, and so we will have done a lot of work to help push that project further, which has still been stalled. Including borrowing money, and which we never would have authorized just for him. Yeah, so I'm not very optimistic about the project, and I
Bill?
think definitely. I mean, Missouri upped its ante, but that followed Illinois' upping its ante pretty significantly.
But let me just say this: Illinois does not have a pot to pee in. And so they have no legislation that has authorized any money. They have been talking. And so this is real money from Missouri, and it is talk from Illinois. And I hope that the folks who are making a decision can see through it all.
Okay, you remain optimistic.
Right.
Otis, I appreciate the optimism. I know that it is very important, and hopefully that all of your efforts, and I mean, I think if you weren't spearheading this for the city of St. Louis, our confidence would not be that strong. And so I truly appreciate all of your efforts, and I hope on April 1st we get successful information, because as a city, we have to promote ourselves, and if it's $8 million or whatever the cost is, you have to look at it. But if we're not in the game, we can't win the game.
Right. This is one of those where it may happen, as Alderman French says, where we don't get it. So I'm a realist, but I am optimistic that we can get this, because I think we've done everything that we can do. We are the incumbent location. There are a lot of things that are sort of, I call them intangibles, that we think will contribute to hopefully a decision for us. But then again,
I'm looking forward to being with you on April 1st.
Okay.
All right, well, thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
All right, being no other business, meeting adjourned.